I'm Bethany Davis, and this is Being Real.
Sponsored by the Weight Clinic and Alpha Insurance.
Ronda Walker is one of only 2 women serving on Montgomery's County Commission. She holds many titles. She's a wife, a mother, a motivational speaker, a breast cancer survivor, a Jesus lover, a natural leader, and she's my friend. Join us as we sit down for some good old-fashioned girl talk. This may cause us to grab some tissues in the process.
Communities don't just happen. They're built by people. From the big moments to the small acts of kindness. It's the authentic connections we make that define us.
Nice.
At Alpha Insurance, we know that every day you're building things that are worth protecting. Because for us, this is more than coverage. It's who we are. Alpha Insurance, building tomorrow together.
Are you tired of feeling drained, being overweight, having no motivation? The Weight Clinic in Prattville can help. Weight loss isn't just a physical challenge, it's a mental challenge. That's why we support our patients every step of the way with physician-directed weight loss. We offer a variety of weight loss medication, supplements, and services tailored to your personal goals. Reclaim your motivation and energy and love you again. The Weight Clinic in Prattville. Call us today.
Well, I have 4 children, 3 boys, and then the youngest is a girl. And our oldest son, Hugh, graduated from Auburn University last year and is a civil engineer and has a great job with a great company. And he is engaged to be married. He's getting married this December, so we are thrilled. And Madison is just wonderful, and we can't wait to welcome her into the family. And then our second son, Grant, is a senior at Auburn studying building science, and he is in the Army ROTC. So he will serve our country once he gets out of Auburn and continue to grow and develop and decide what he wants to do career-wise. And then 2 still at home. Eli is in 10th grade at Alabama Christian, and Margaret is in 8th grade at Alabama Christian also.
That's a really, really busy, busy family that you have, and somehow you still manage to have your hand all over this community. I don't know how do you do all that? How are you able to be in so many places all at the same time?
It's just the magic of social media.
Is that what it is? Because you're everywhere.
We can, and I do a lot of things, no doubt, but we can make ourselves look busier, or we can make ourselves look perfect, or we can make ourselves look whatever we want to look on social media. Now, I am busy. I do a lot of things. I've done several things today already. But the truth is, it's not okay to be too busy. Busyness can be in a season, like you were saying. You know, sometimes the spring gets a little busier. Certainly, the holidays get a little busier, or some seasons in our life might get busy. But if we are busy 12 months out of the year, all the time, 365, we're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So for me, I wear a lot of hats. I have several jobs, but my number one priority is being a wife and a mother. So if I'm not doing that with all my heart, soul, and strength, then I'm doing something wrong. So that's number one. And I have a great husband who, I mean, we're partners. We get it done. We collaborate and we figure it all out. But being a wife and being a mother is number one. Everything else, we figure out how to fit that in.
How do you know when it's time? I mean, how do you recognize, okay, this is too much. I've got too much on my plate. Something's going to have to shove off.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't. Number one, I say no. I've learned to say no. I've always been good at saying no, because I know how I get. If I get too busy and stressed out, then I'm not good to anybody, and I'm miserable. So I've always been good to say no when something doesn't. You know, it could be a great nonprofit board that somebody wants me to serve on. It could be a great project or fundraiser that somebody wants me to help them with. Has the validity of the task doesn't have any bearing on whether or not I should say yes or no. Like you said, my plate, there's only so much time in everybody's day. There's only so much room on everybody's plate. And when mine gets full, if I want to add something, then I have to take something off. A couple of years ago, my husband bought a small business and wants me to be there 60 hours a week.
Because you've got 60 extra hours, right?
And he kept saying, when are you going to be here more? When are you going to be here more? And I said, my plate is full. There's no more room on my plate. I can't just add working for Pate Landscape onto my plate. So I said, something has to go. So I had to take I had to leave one of my jobs, maybe, a job that I loved, a job that I felt that I was good at, to go to a job that doesn't pay me, and I don't know what I'm doing. But the bottom line is, when we want to add something, we have to evaluate, and I was too full, so I removed something in order to add something. And that's a constant process.
It is.
It's our entire life that we have to process those decisions.
I mean, even in addition to your wife and mother hat, your hats.
Yeah.
You must have a closet full of hats.
It feels that
How
way
many do you have?
It feels that way. Well, I am a Montgomery County Commissioner, and that is a part-time job. And I kind of laugh, and we would all laugh. It's a part-time job, but it's really full-time work. And it can be as time-consuming as you allow it to be. Anything can be, but I love it, and I'm very passionate about local government. So I'm a county commissioner. I'm a speaker, motivational speaking, professional development speaking. I was working with Troy University, their continuing education and outreach, but that is one of the things that had to shift off of my plate in order to add something new. And I love that organization. But and then the wife and the mother, and it's crazy. Every single night, my family wants supper on the table.
Every night.
Right, every night.
Did we just eat last night?
Yeah, and that can be good for the week. And then there's breakfast, and then there's school lunch. So definitely managing a household in general, that alone is a full-time job. And so those are, I think I named them all.
I think so.
I've got them.
You were appointed before you were elected to the county commission, but you were not a stranger to politics before the county commission. You've got a pretty extensive political background.
Well, I always like to say that I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant, and people would say, I'm not a good politician. Good politicians have a distinct personality and ability to razzle dazzle that I don't seem to have. But I have always loved government and public policy. So my first job out of college was with Senator Richard Shelby in D.C. As a 22-year-old kid, I got on a plane and I moved to D.C. and literally with nothing but a piece of paper in my hand, I got a cab at the airport and drove to the place that I was going to live for the next several years. So I loved it. It was such to be 22 and to be in a city like Washington, D.C. when you're so young and impressionable, and being around that level of power and influence, but also just a lot of people willing to pour themselves into you and teach you things and train you. I wish every 22-year-old could have a big experience like that at a young, impressionable age. So Shelby taught us, if you don't ask, you don't get. I didn't embrace that mentality probably until 20 years later.
Wow.
And that was just one of the many things. Experience is the best teacher, right? And you can hear things theoretically in your 20s, but until you couple that intellectual knowledge with life experience, you really don't have that, okay, I get it now. Okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so in the past decade, I've started to enjoy some of that. Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
You don't ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
What are some things that you maybe wish you had asked for?
Oh gosh,
that you didn't get.
That's a great question. I've always kind of guided my life through preparation meets opportunity. There's no such thing as luck. It's preparation meeting opportunity. And it's kind of like what I said, if I do the right thing, if I work hard, if I study, if I read, if I meet people, if I build relationships, if I prepare, then when an opportunity comes my way, I'll be ready for it. But the gap there is you have to go for that opportunity and don't ever see an opportunity and say, wow, I would love to do that, but be intimidated. And we've all done that. I mean, gosh, if I sat here and thought of times that I didn't speak up that I wish I had, or times that I didn't go for something that I wish, there are lots of those. But my hope is now, moving forward, I won't say that anymore. Now, I might get told no sometimes, or I might lose sometimes, but I'm going to go for it.
Did you ever see yourself serving in a political office, in an elected position?
You know, it was funny. I just said recently, we have an incredible staff at Montgomery County. Our administrator, our deputy administrator, and throughout the commission, the staff is just stellar. And I said to them, there was a group of about 5 or 6, and I was like, y'all make us look good. Y'all do such a great job. And they were like, well, that is our job, is to make you guys look good. And I said, you know, that's always been my job, to work for somebody else.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, that's almost easier. But I do enjoy that. Did I see myself? No, I was never the type of person, my personality was never such that I had a long-term plan. I never saw more than 5 years down the road. I still don't. Again, it's just, I'm going to grow where I'm planted. I'm going to prepare and just see what opportunities unfold, or what opportunities, I always want to be careful not to create opportunities out of nothingness, because oftentimes those are mistakes. But when God leads towards a certain opportunity, or sometimes it's just like every arrow is pointing in a direction, and you've prepared and you just go for that.
I think that's interesting that you never look more than 5 years down the road, because as you said, we do push our kids really as children to look so far down the road and to have it all planned out. I think I see that as a really strong leadership quality. First of all, I see you as one of the strongest leaders that I've ever met. But that is an incredible leadership quality, to be able to understand that this is where I am, and this is the time and the place that needs my attention now, instead of looking ahead. It's sometimes so tempting to think, well, I just need to do what I'm doing now just to get to the next step.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like it's so important to use your term, I love that, grow where you're planted?
Back to the kid thing, I can't stress this enough, we are destroying our children. We are destroying a generation by pushing them too hard and by making them feel less than, because they're not perfect and they can't figure out their life perfectly. And we need to take that on ourselves as adults. You know, as a 22-year-old, I would have never dreamed that I could go to Washington, D.C. and work for a senator. If I had insisted on my own plans, they would have been far less powerful or exciting or big if I would have done it in Ronda's abilities. And so I think that's part of why we need to just take a step back. But also, I mean, if we're in hurry mode and I just need to do this, and this, so then I can do that, I mean, what's the purpose? What are we missing? I mean, we're missing today. It's not the destination, it's the journey. Life is not the destination, it's the journey. But also, we know that we're not promised 5 years from now. We're not promised tomorrow. So why would I squander today in order to look way down the road? It's not the way that I want to live my life.
I should have brought my Ronda scarf.
Oh, yeah.
I still have my Ronda scarf, and I still see it in the closet every now and then, and think that was good and great. Let's talk about the fight, though, because when you say you fought it for a year, you fought for a year. That was a battle. That was a battle. Did you know going in that you were going to win?
My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer at 58 years old, but she caught it in a routine mammogram, and it was like stage 0. So that was very encouraging. So I knew to keep an extra lookout. So I started my mammograms at age 40, like I was supposed to, and it was 2012 when I had my first mammogram, 2013, and then the calendar turned to 2014, and that was the year I was appointed to the Montgomery County Commission. So my life got really busy, and I didn't schedule all of my routine doctor's appointments, and I let 6 months go by before, I should have done it in the spring. Well, I just kind of let time slide by, and it got to the point that I felt the lump. And I wasn't doing a self-exam or anything. I felt it in the shower, and if it gets to the point that you can feel it, you're in bad shape. And so yes, and that was on a Friday, so there was nothing I could do until Monday. That was the darkest. Nobody had told me I had cancer. I knew I had cancer. I didn't have to be told. I knew what was going on. That was the darkest weekend of my life. And then on that Monday, I went to see my GYN, and he immediately sent me to, the cancer center for a biopsy and all the things. And so that Tuesday afternoon, my husband and I met with the doctor, and it doesn't matter that it's 8 years later. It is always raw, because it's just, cancer is brutal.
It is.
It's just brutal. So the doctor said, you have cancer. And she said, you have 2 tumors, and they're bad. And that's all she could tell me. Because that's all they knew until they did further testing. But she didn't like what she saw. And then you go into a series of about 2 weeks that you're having to do MRIs and PET scans and blood work and all the exams and hoops that you go through with a doctor. And that 2-week period, I was overwhelmed with fear and paralyzed with fear, really. And it wasn't about Ronda, because I wasn't scared about, I didn't realize how bad the treatment was going to be. I didn't realize how miserable. So I wasn't scared of that. I wasn't scared of, I wasn't even scared of me losing my life. I was scared because my children were 6 and 7. My babies were only 6 and 7. And they were so young, and they needed me, because children need their moms. And so that's where my fear came in, and I was petrified. I could not leave them. I couldn't. And I was just on my face praying and really begging God for my life and begging Him. I didn't want to die. And He said, Ronda, what is it that you want? And I said, I want to die. He said, no. What is it that you want? And I said, I want to live and be a mom to my children and love them and be their biggest cheerleader. He said, what is it that you want? And I didn't understand why he kept asking me that. And I was like, well, I want to live, and I don't want to be in pain, and I want to be a mom and a wife, and I just want to live a comfortable life without any pain and suffering. And I kind of felt him giggle in love, and so much love. And he said, Ronda, what do you really, really want? And finally, I just laid it all aside, and I said, I want to live a life without fear. I don't want to be afraid. He said, that I can do. And so from that moment, laying on that living room floor, God started a process of breaking that bondage to fear, which fear is a basic human emotion. We all experience fear. But what do we do with that fear? Do we let it paralyze us? Do we let it keep us from doing things that we're called to do? Do we let it freeze us in our tracks? Or do we learn to release the fear? Because fear is not wrong, but our reaction to fear can be wrong. And so he started me through a process of being able to release fear from my own, personal mortality, but also fear of situations and fear of, sometimes we get intimidated by certain people or situations, just releasing me from that level of fear.
I want to play a little game with you.
Okay.
This is really fun.
Okay.
I just need you to not think. Just the first thing that pops into your head.
Jason tells me that all the time. Stop thinking so much.
Stop thinking so much. Take a little break.
Okay.
Turn the brain off and just tell me the first thing that comes to your head.
Okay, ready.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Oh, okay. Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Because you have both.
Sorry, baby Craig.
Okay, I was wondering. Comedy or suspense?
Suspense.
What's your go-to fast food restaurant?
Oh, McDonald's.
Okay. Favorite holiday?
Easter.
Favorite season?
Spring.
What's your favorite movie?
Of all time, The Princess Bride.
Oh, good one. What's your favorite family together activity?
We love to be at the lake.
Yeah.
We love to be at the lake, out on the water together. It's our favorite.
Well, you guys have such a great spot,
Yeah,
too.
we're very blessed.
That is amazing. I want to talk about your family, too. And I want to tell you something, too, that I have never told you before.
Okay.
But something that I noticed very early on in our friendship and that I've taken with me, that I learned from you. You're a blended family. We'll go back to that term blended. I don't know why I said that out loud because I'm not a fan of that term. As we blended our family, I noticed straight up that when you talked about all of your kids, they were all of your kids. There's no, these kids are mine, these kids are his. They're all our kids. And that stood out to me from the very, very beginning. And it's something that I've tried really hard to adopt as well. But I want you to just give me a little background on that. I know why I love that. But why was that something that you made such a priority? We've never talked about this before.
No, we never have. I didn't get married until I was 32, so I was single for a very long time, and I lived in D.C. and I lived in Honolulu and was just kind of doing my own thing. And I met Jason, and he had 2 little boys, and that was not the plan that I had in my mind. And God is love, and He revealed to me, number one, Rhonda, it's not about you, but trust me, I'm going to use the very thing that you think is not your plan to bless you the most in your life. And as Jason and I got to know each other and developed a relationship, and he was ready to propose, his boys were his number one priority. And he said to me, they are ours. They are not, they're not my boys. They're going to be our boys. The boys have a wonderful mother and have a great relationship with her. I was not the mom. I was the stepmom, but I don't like that word, and I didn't want to use that word. And Jason said they are ours, and we love them, and we're going to treat them the same. And so he really laid that foundation to a girl who really didn't understand anything. I had never had children. I have never been married. I'd never had children. I hadn't even really been around children that much, but they were the core of his world. And if I didn't realize that and embrace that, then we were going to stop right there. So I did realize that and embrace that, and they were just 3 and 4 when Jason and I met, and then they were 4 and 5 when we got married. So yeah, we came home from our honeymoon with children, waiting for us. So it was a challenge, to say the least. And I have so many things I got caught up in or emotional about that. I was immature. And I didn't have the emotional intelligence to say, Rhonda, this is not a big deal, or that's not a big deal. I was used to being single, and I was used to knowing when everything was I know the train's got to run on time in Rhonda's world. Well, you suddenly have a husband and 2 kids, and no train is running on time.
Nothing.
And that was a hard adjustment for me, and sometimes I did some things and thought some things and felt some things that I shouldn't have, but they were perfectly normal. But Jason was the glue, and the boys were and are such good boys. And they're so precious, and God knew that I needed them in my life. God knew that I needed them, and that was it. And then Jason and I together had 2 more children, and I remember thinking when I was pregnant with Eli, the older boys were 9 and 10, and I was like, I wonder how they're going to connect, and I wonder how this is going to work, right? Bethany, it was as if we had always been together. they adored Eli, and then a year later Margaret came along, so it didn't take long, and then we just had these two, and it was the four of us, so the four of them, and they all just clicked and bonded and love each other, and till this day they're all very close.
I never hear you say any of those terms. You say you don't like the step terms.
I don't.
Everybody's just, they're all brothers, they're all sisters, they're all yours.
Right, and oh, I've got a funny story. Right, they're not. It's not step. Again, Hugh and Grant have a wonderful mother, and I, I'm the stepmom, but I just don't use that term.
Yeah.
But I don't say I'm their mom.
Right.
They're just my kid, but they're my kids.
Yeah.
They're my kids. But the funniest story is Margaret was young, and I never wanted to. I don't know. I probably didn't do a really good job of explaining to Eli and Margaret why Hugh and Grant would go away for a week
and then come
back. And they knew that Hugh and Grant had a mom, that they lived with the mom, and then they would come to see us, and that confused Margaret, and I didn't do a super great job of explaining it. And she was out walking in the neighborhood with a neighbor of ours, and she said to the neighbor, she said, I've got a stepmom, but I never see her. I've never even been to her house. So Margaret thought that Hugh and Grant's mom was her stepmom, and it was just so funny. And the neighbor was like, I don't think you have a stepmom. So maybe that was an extreme of not talking about it, but they certainly understand now, and we're all one.
The dynamics, though, are
family.
so hard. They are so hard to explain.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm so glad that you're a little upfront with explaining the feelings and the thoughts, because bringing a family like that together, it is hard. And they always call it a blended family. I feel like we should call it like a crashed family or something, because it comes with adjustments is not a strong enough word. It comes with a lot of work to make it successful.
It does.
What's the secret?
Well, I mean, there's the practical side, which is scheduling and agendas. And I mean, there was a year that we had 4 kids at 4 different schools. So just the logistics on the practical side, and the weekends, and okay, well, we've got the boys this weekend, we don't have them that weekend, we've got, Eli and Margaret are doing this, that, and the other, what's going on. So, but I'm a scheduler, so I kind of was able to embrace that side of it. The other side of it is the emotional side, the side of this is hard, and the days that you're like, I can't do this, or the days that you think, whatever we allow our emotions to overcome us, and again, that is just it's about maturity. It's about dying to self, and I was a very self-centered person when I got married, because again, all I knew was being single. All I knew was I did what I wanted when I wanted it, and not out of selfishness. That was just my life.
Right.
I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to ask anybody. I had my own money, and I had my own opportunities, and I just did whatever I wanted to do. Anybody, whether you marry into a blended family or not, when you go from being single to being married, you sacrifice self, and you give yourself 100% to the other person. You give 100% to them, and they give 100% to you. And that was a hard. That's a hard transition for most people.
Yeah.
And I'll admit it was a hard transition for me. I've grown a lot. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I knew everything, right? You couldn't tell me anything.
Didn't we all? I know.
And I was loudmouthed about it, and would come across with the condescending, and it's not the way to win friends and influence people. So I'm very thankful now in my late 40s and now into my 50s, my emotional intelligence has gotten me to a place that I know when to keep my mouth shut, right? Isn't that what we need to do? So I know when to keep my mouth shut. I want to empty out Rhonda, the pride, when you say what is still left to do, or what is still out there, I have no idea, because I don't see what's going to happen in 5 years. But what I want to do is get out of the way, because I have opinions and I have emotions and I have a loud mouth and I want to throw elbows and I'm a fighter and I'm strong-willed and I want to push my way into every room and throw my stuff on the table and say this is the way it's going to be. I want God to continue to grow me and my emotional intelligence to say, you know what, Rhonda, that's not the way to operate in this world. That's how I was born. That's my temperament. And we all come into this world with a certain temperament, and it really never changes throughout our life. But to be aware of, yes, that's who I am. I'm a fighter. I like to throw elbows. I like to get in your face and say, you're wrong and I'm right. But if you genuinely care about people and you care about relationships, then you have to put yourself aside and die to yourself every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, and in order to be able to genuinely help people and love people and create those relationships. I mean, we're here, life is but a vapor, right? And then we're gone. So, I mean, what do we want to leave behind? What, not stuff, not collecting stuff, which, is going to just be destroyed one day, but winning people into, helping people understand that they can be freed from whatever darkness that they're in, that there is light available to them, and being a light to the world.
You are.
Well,
you are such a light. You've been a light for me. You're a light for a lot of people.
It's Jesus through me, right? And that's my prayer. Get me out of the way. What you're seeing in me, anything good that you see in me, is Jesus through me. Yes. It's not Rhonda, and I want less of Rhonda and more of him.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your light with us.
Glad to do it. Glad to do it.